Hey everybody, hello to our Lap of Love family. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am Christiana, one of the grief coaches at our pet loss support team, and I'm super excited to be joined today by Erika Sinner, the CEO of Directorie. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, Directorie.
Directorie, as well as the founder of Pets Are Family, an organization that she was compelled to create in honor of her sweet baby boy Kingston, and the recognition of the incredible impact pets and pet loss have on every aspect of our lives, including professionally. The organization's mission is to educate, advocate, support everybody affected by pet loss, from the pet parents to their support systems to professionals. Thank you so much for being here with us, Erika.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be here.
Yeah, so glad to have you here and just your perspective. Now, as I've mentioned, one thing that really resonates with me in your mission is your advocacy for more education and understanding of pet loss in the workplace. I would love if you can tell us a little bit about your baby Kingston, your pet loss journey, and what led you to finding this purpose and spreading awareness in this aspect in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Kingston was my husband and I's first puppy together. My husband and I decided not to have kids. Human kids were not for us. And so we wanted to be fur parents. So he really was our son. And we got to be his parents for 8 wonderful years. We just lost him this past May, with 6 days' notice to a heart tumor. As an employer myself, from the day I founded my company, we've always had pet bereavement leave. I always knew it was going to be hard, but I don't know that I appreciated just how hard it would be. I think too, I've always navigated life challenges thinking, I can handle anything. I've got the confidence to do that. But losing Kingston shattered that illusion. I was just in such a profound state of grief, unlike anything I've ever experienced before. And I think, when you take a moment, which everyone on this call and who follows Lap of Love understands, they really are family. Pets are family. And if we can accept that truth, and if the people around us can accept that truth, then the grief, the pain, the needing time off work, like all of it makes sense in terms of our societal norms around loss. And so that's what I knew. I needed to raise awareness and not only talk about it, but say, here's how you could incorporate pet bereavement leave, as it's often overlooked in organizational policies. I believe it should become a standard.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think you make a great point there. Talking about it is so important. I think that's the first step, is getting the conversation out there. But then once we know that this is, kind of an issue that deserves some attention, then comes some accountability. What do we do? But we often don't even know where to get started. So I really appreciate you recognizing that. Okay, let's get to that next step. What do you feel was the most difficult part about trying to go back to work after Kingston passed?
Yeah, it's interesting. For me, the hardest part was really the shame I felt around it, that it hurt this bad, shame that maybe my team wouldn't understand, or they wouldn't think I was strong or I wasn't leading in my role as a CEO. And I think it was interesting because even in my own position where I own my own company, and if I'm feeling it, then I just knew others would be feeling it, and perhaps even with more weight, if they don't have the flexibility to take time off. Because it was hard, I think, coming back to a full schedule of meetings and or whatever your normal work is, you're not feeling normal, and you're still trying to just grasp your new reality. I think the other thing that was hard is just engaging with my team. While I have always had pet bereavement leave in our policies, it was just interesting how we would engage, right? Every call would be, "How was your weekend?" Or others would just pretend it didn't happen. And that's hard, right? I think if you lose somebody in your family, you would at least say, "I'm so sorry for your loss." And it's not that any of my team members did anything wrong. It's more as when I talk to them, people aren't really sure what to do when you lose a pet. I think in grief, it's already hard anyway. There's awkward conversations, but I think it's even more gray when it comes to pets, um, which is hard for me to believe, right? You know, you think, how can this be when they're so woven into the fabric of our everyday lives? I mean, there's routines, there's memories, ours sleep in our bed, which I don't know how you can get any closer than that. And so I think that's what was hard. It was just engaging with the team and even them being able to, you know, accept me back and re-engage with me coming back.
Yeah, yeah, I really resonate with that, and this idea that, grief etiquette is already kind of not great in our society, but there is this kind of idea where if somebody tells you, oh, my grandmother passed away, she helped raise me, we were really close, whether you had that relationship with your grandmother or not, you kind of know, like, oh, like, say something, this is a big deal, right? But when it comes to pets, that grief etiquette, the bar seems to be even lower as far as the understanding. If somebody hasn't gone through it, they really don't recognize that it's like this is impacting every aspect of your life, especially those who work from home, right? Because they were our coworkers, as I like to call them.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Or even from home, you come home every day and they're greeting you at the door. They're excited to see you. You still have all of your routines with them. You miss them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to, that being said, I guess I am curious. How would you suggest, like, what for somebody who maybe may not understand that, but wants to support somebody who's going through pet loss, particularly in the workplace? Like, how would you suggest, what is the best way to support somebody who is coming back after losing one of their four-legged family members? What are your recommendations having been through this?
You know, I think it's just having a human connection with each other, even though you're at work. You spend a lot of time with your coworkers, at least 40 hours a week usually, out of an entire week. So I think being a human being with them and just reminding them, you can't do it wrong. Grief is your own. Even if I don't understand, I understand that you're hurting. Reaching out to them, it's not just your family and friends, but you can reach out to your coworkers and say, hey, you don't have to reply, but I'm thinking about you. Um, on my website, I've created some text prompts around, here's very simple things that you can reach out to your coworkers about. I truly think the most powerful thing that you can do is just make sure that they know that the pain is real for them and that the connection was really real with their pet.
Erica, I think we have you frozen here.
Can you hear me
Not
now?
sure if that's
Oh my
on
God.
my end. Okay, yeah, we got you back. Yes, sorry about
Okay.
that. I heard you, you cut out right when you said the pain is real.
Oh, yes. I think that's the most important thing. I think it's making sure that they know that that the pain is real, that what they're feeling is validated, um, and just connecting with them on that level. And you don't have to go into all of the details. It can be uncomfortable to talk about grief, but just letting your coworker even know, I'm thinking about you and I know this is really hard for you. It goes a long way.
Yeah. And, that really stood out to me. You said, I might not understand, but I understand that you're hurting. Right. And
Yes.
to recognize that, not let it like we're going to recognize it in just the way that somebody is carrying themselves and going through this. So why not just have that communication and say, I might not understand, and we don't always need to have all the right words, right? We're not going to fix it. We can't fix somebody else's grief. That's not our job. Our job is to just, hold space for their grief, let them know that we're here. Um, so I really appreciate you mentioning that. That verbiage is something that I'm going to keep in my back pocket.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, coming back to this idea of ways to support people who are going through grief in the workplace, as coworkers, there is something that we can do, but on a higher level, one thing I'm really proud that Lap of Love has long realized as well, is that pets really are family and deserve to be included in bereavement leave. From your perspective and your research, how do you think this could benefit a company as a whole if they decided to consider adding this benefit for their employees?
Absolutely. As an employer and also having a network of knowing other employers, but also through research, I think today we're all struggling with talent retention. I think a fundamental way of retaining your employees, your talent, your workforce is really recognizing that they all have a life outside of work. They're not just their titles and the effort. And something like adding pet bereavement leave starts to address and acknowledge that your employee does have this life outside of work. And what happens outside of work is going to impact how they show up at work. You mentioned earlier, you're going to get cues from your coworkers around how they're showing up and their own actions, right? And even their voice. I would say to employers, by having an employee come back so soon and not giving them even just a day to breathe, it could be harmful for the company as a whole. I think there's opportunity for errors. That person is not fully there. They've probably been crying all night or all day. They're exhausted. They're fatigued. So not only errors in their work, but if they are customer facing, client facing, that also reflects on your own organization's, brand. So I think that there is incentive for employers to offer, a little bit of breathing room for their employees who have lost a pet.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think it's mutually beneficial, right? And when employees feel like they are, seen as human, that they have that flexibility to be a human being in all aspects of their life, it makes them feel
Yeah.
appreciated, right? And when we feel appreciated, it makes us want to show up when we're able to and do our best that we're able to at that time. Because, there's this expression that we use in grief. It's, grief brain, right? Grief brain is real. And it is going to affect our cognitive senses. Grief is the internal, personal response to loss, and that's our spiritual, emotional, cognitive, physical response. So it
Yeah.
really affects all of those aspects.
Yeah.
So
I would also say too, if I could add one thing to that, I think a lot of employers might say, take a PTO day or take a sick day or just talk to your manager and you can probably take a day off. I think those things, that's great that it's being acknowledged. I think by actually having it as part of the policy, at least, I mean, even for me, I felt shame around, I should be showing up at work. When an employee can see it written into a policy, it validates for them. The company understands what I'm going through, and I do need time to grieve. I think it's important to have it a structured way to say, yes, take it, take some time off.
yes, and I think ambition, right, and hard work ethic are values that are, very close to our culture. And so and independence, and so the idea of, having to be vulnerable, recognizing that we're vulnerable, having to say, hey, I don't think I can come in today, and having that conversation can put us in an even more vulnerable position. And so I'm glad that you bring that up. Now, is there somewhere on your website that people can find maybe verbiage or ideas on how to introduce this idea to the higher ups wherever they're working?
Absolutely, yes. So um, I've created 4 documents on the website. 3 are really focused around how to engage with the human resources department. So the one document quotes SHRM, which is the National Organization for Human Resources. All companies, regardless of the industry, look to them around standards for how to handle human resources related situations. And I've pulled some quotes from them on on the first document, just to give background on why this is important. They mention pets as well. The second is an email or talking points to introduce the idea. Um, Not only introduce it, but how to just start the conversation, or have the conversation with them. And then there's an FAQ document, because you're not just convincing human resources. They're going to have to then go to the executive team, and they're of course going to have questions around, well, how much time do I have, and what qualifies, and how do we think about this? And so those FAQs include a lot of answers to that, but also what we just talked about in terms of the benefit to the company for talent retention, and also the opportunity for error that might happen within your own organization. And then the last document I have around the workforce is training. It's how to engage with your coworkers. What are the things you might be, saying, or even as a manager, if an employee comes to you and says, my pet, something tragic happened today, or it's going to happen, how as a manager should you respond to the situation? Are all things that you can find there. I think they're all really important.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, I believe the website is petsourfamily.info.
Yes,
Is
yes.
that
And
right? Yeah,
info is so, yeah, it's .info versus .com.
perfect. Yeah. So and we'll put that link up in the comments as well for you guys. And that really stood out to me looking, through everything, all of these things that you're providing, because a personal story is, something that will get somebody's emotional attention. But when it comes to decision making, people want facts, right? And they really want an outline of, the numbers. What do the numbers mean? What do they add up to? And I think you do a really good job in providing that in a way that we can provide that to, the people in our own companies or in other people's companies that they're working at.
You. Thank you. That's the goal. That was the goal.
Yeah. Now, you know, of course, not everybody has, people who are not necessarily the CEO of their company may have to have this conversation about coming back to work. And what are some ways that you have found are both professional and authentic that an employee can communicate to their team, or anybody else maybe in their life that they've made commitments to, about what their needs or limitations may be when coming back to work after loss?
It's a great question. I would first say to anyone who's coming back is you've gotta slow down yourself, right? Let this time be about you. Don't judge the way it's affecting you. And I think that the biggest thing is we've got to tell people the truth. I think, you don't have to let everyone in to all of the details, but I think that there is a way to explain, I'm going through a hard time right now, or um, here's some boundaries I have to set in place to be able to get through what I'm going through. And on my website, I'm going to be posting, I think in the next week, there will be email templates, but also personal text message templates. I think what's important at work, in coming back, is making sure that your manager or your team understands that you're going through an emotionally taxing situation, that you completely understand, right? Your priorities, that you want to do a good job, the importance of your responsibilities, but at the same time being honest to say, I would appreciate some grace as I find my footing again. How can I gradually ease back in, or can you help me prioritize my projects to be able to allow for some breathing room? And then thanking them for understanding, and supporting you through this difficult time. I think if you can have that human discussion, and you're still acknowledging there's a responsibility to the organization around your commitments. It's just, does everything have to be right now? I want to do a good job, but does everything have to be right now? I've got emails too around, overtime. I think there's a way to even say, I appreciate you thinking of me for overtime, or I know that we're shorthanded. Hey, I could be the default here in a couple of months. Right now, can we talk about, how we can balance this out, because I am really going through a hard time. I think it does come back to telling, explaining the situation and telling them the truth. From a personal standpoint, I think some text messages that I'll be posting out too is, I think if you had made plans before, it is okay to change your mind. And I think you can tell someone in text message to just say, I wanted to reach out and I wanted to be honest with you. I need to change my plans. I know this is unexpected. I hope you can appreciate my honesty. Let's find a better time to connect. But I think, people will be calling you, and sometimes they're calling just to say, I care about you, and you might not have the energy to talk to them. And it's okay to text them that too and say, hey, I'm currently like, I'm drained and I'm really low on energy. Thank you so much for calling. Let me get back to you when I'm in a better headspace. Um, or even if your coworkers or your family is inviting you to different, things that they want to do with you. I know with my own support circle, there was, it was a month after and they're like, come to this barbecue. And I still was just like, I was not ready to engage. And so it was just, hey, I can't make it. I'm still going through a really tough time right now, but thanks so much for the invite. It's okay to do those things. You're not really letting anyone down, right? Like you've got to take care of yourself too.
Yes. And I appreciate you mentioning that even a month after, right? It was still really difficult because society kind of has this timeline for what grief is supposed to look like, especially with a pet, and they assume that just because we're functioning again, we're finally getting out of bed, we're showering, we are getting groceries, we're figuring that part out that, oh, they must be fine. Right. The reality of it is that it's a process, and there's a lot going on underneath that we are still trying to work through on a day-to-day basis. And 1 month really isn't that long, especially when we think about the amount of time spent with them in our lives, right? It's really nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So,
you're absolutely
no, go ahead. Sorry. There's a little bit of a lag. So, but go ahead.
gotta love technology. I was just agreeing with you. You're absolutely right. I think our country as a whole, it's how there's an urgency to just get back to being okay. It's hard to be uncomfortable. It's hard to be vulnerable. It's awkward. Um, but it is still that we are human beings. And I know when I first talked to you, and it was only like a couple of months after, and I still had said, I might cry. I'm sorry if I talk about Kingston, I'm crying. And you said to me, it has not been that much time. Just hearing that back meant a lot to me because grief doesn't have a timeline. There are days, I'll go a few days that I'm doing great. And then I'm like breaking down in tears because I saw Kingston's favorite spot on a couch. Um, and it's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And it's messy, right? It's not linear.
Yeah.
And I just want to let everybody else know. I want to reference that she said there are some days that are fine and that are okay, and then all of a sudden, we have this grief activation, and it's just a reminder that we're not moving backwards. Sometimes people feel like, oh, I took a few steps back, and in my personal opinion, there is no moving backwards in our grief. Sometimes there are things that we need to revisit in our grief, some emotions, some thoughts, some memories that we need to revisit. And we are coming back to this feeling that we might have thought we were done with, but with the lived insight and experience that we have in our grief journey so far, and so it doesn't mean that we're moving backwards. It's very spiral, it's messy, we're revisiting that.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate you mentioning that, and just where you are. I've had the honor of reading your book, and how much you have been through. You really are somebody who is resilient, right? And you're very much like, I can get through anything. And it can be really difficult for our own self-identity when, we see that in ourselves, and then we go through something and we're questioning, why is this so hard,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Everything you've just said. I think in the manager team training on the workplace resources on the website, I talk about that because, right now in bereavement leave plans, you get, a couple of days. If it's your mom or your dad, you get a week. If it's an immediate family, and then if it's a cousin, I don't know what to do there. You may get, 1 or 2 days. it's so interesting how we've decided what the amount of time is, and that usually lets you get through funeral planning. But with pets, it is the same level of hurt that is happening, and it is every single day that they were with you, that you're reminded every day they're not with you. And so in that training, I talk about this idea of, your employee might come back and they need some grace in the first couple of months that they're coming back, and then it might come back where they're going to have a day, and you can visibly see it on their face, and they're not going to just get past it. You still have to be looking out as a good manager, as a good team member, um, and know, right, that it's not just, they're not just better and it's over. The grief will still be there.
Yeah, and it's ever evolving. Now, bringing your book up, I want to talk a little bit about that. And I know that it's a book about your journey, but it also includes some really thorough research on so many different aspects of, how pet loss impacts our lives, what pets mean to us in our lives, and what losing them also means, right? They change our lives coming into our life, and they change our lives again when they pass. Can you tell us a little bit about that, where and when people can find it, what they can expect to get out of it?
Absolutely. I want to say to everyone first, I don't think of myself as an author, but I did choose to write this book. It's not so much that I feel that my life is so interesting, but I do think what Kingston has taught me is, and I think to be able to adequately convey the lessons, I knew I had to write a book, and I knew I had to let people into my life, and the goal was really one, for those who are experiencing pet loss, to feel completely validated that all of this is real. I have been through really hard points in my life that I have shared in my book, and to say this is equal to those things, I think helps to start setting the stage for those who read my book that are only reading it because they don't understand. My goal for them is to take them on the journey with me, and that by the end of the book, when I say, I love my kids, that I don't have to say I love my fur kids, that they're just part of my family. And that's really the goal of the book, is to really bring the two together in validating those who are going through it, and then also and even those who have already been through it, to say, like, yes, everything you went through was trauma. And then for those who don't understand, to, like, let me let you in on what your loved one is experiencing. And I did a lot of research, and I also shared my own personal journey around, therapy and going to my doctor. And also, this is real, right? Like, the feelings are real. Seeking help is absolutely okay. What my experience was like going back to work, and then all of the resources that are on my website and additional ones are in the back of the book. Um, but I really hope that it reaches a lot of people. You can find it on petsorfamily.info. We're in the final publishing stages. So if you sign up to get notifications, I think the next update that will go out is picking the cover of the book. So anyone who signs up for it, you'll get to see the whole process. But yeah, I'm excited about it. And, you know, I just, I want to just say in closing, to you and to those that are listening, I really feel strongly about what has happened. And I think sometimes it does take somebody going through it to then advocate for what's happening. Um, and for me, I recognize my position as, owning my own company, but also even having the social media following that my dogs had on Instagram. I had a lot of people checking in on me, and I don't know that I would have made it, or I would have been okay without that. And I recognize that that's not the norm, that, these are not normal circumstances. And so that's really the driver, and what made me feel I had a responsibility, to put it out there, to advocate for it, and to do more. I think we can't normalize something if we're not talking about it. And so here we are, just being vulnerable out into the world, and taking a chance, and hoping it helps.
Oh,
Oh
maybe.
shoot, did I lose you? Oh man.
Yes, we lost you for just a moment, but we got you back.
Okay.
You were just telling us about how it's really important for you to advocate, you being in the position that you're in, and that's where we lost you.
Yes, it's that. It's just I feel a really deep responsibility to do that. I recognize these are not the normal things, and I really don't know what I would have done without having that type of support. And everyone deserves that level of support. I can't imagine going through it alone. So I would love for anyone to sign up for the updates, to read the book, to reach out on social, on the website. It's their stories too that inspire me and to keep driving the mission forward and to know that the work is meaningful, and that putting myself out there is also meaningful. So,
Yeah, that makes me think of one of my favorite quotes. It's the goal in this life is not to stand high in this world. It is to stoop down and lift mankind a little higher. Right? And it really sounds like that is what you're doing, pretty much. So that really speaks to me, and I just admire you so much. And I want to just thank you for your time. I'm just incredibly impressed and inspired by your willingness to turn pain into purpose, to decrease the stigma of talking about pet loss, but not just that, but advocate for where things can be improved, where people can be educated, how we can change systems that maybe aren't working for the human in us. I really appreciate that. And, for everybody, I want to let her know her website doesn't just have information for, help in the workplace. It really advocates for pet parents as well as support systems of pet parents who are trying to figure out how to support them, as well as it's either there or you're working on it, but, veterinary support, how veterinarians can navigate these conversations about death with their pet parents that they work with every day. And I just really want to thank you for giving this gift to the world from your pain. And I really think that this is Kingston's legacy.
thank you so much. That made me a little emotional. I'm really honored to be here. I appreciate you having me on, and I agree. I think just hearing you say Kingston's name, knowing others will know who he is and was, is really important. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. It has been a pleasure. Thank you, everybody who has been with us. We want to take just a moment or two. If anybody has any questions that they would like to ask Erika about this particular subject, please, we have a few minutes just to take in the comments. So feel free to go ahead and post in the live, and we're happy to do that. I'm just going to look through the comments and see if there's anything that we might have missed. Oh, somebody had to put both of their kitties, say goodbye to both of them in a week. That's really hard.
That breaks my heart.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of loss here, guys. I'm really glad that you guys can resonate with this.
I was seeing some of the comments. Some of our followers are here. I really couldn't have done it without you guys.
Yeah. What is your Instagram? What are your socials if people want to follow you and your family, as they move through this and stay updated on that?
Yeah. So my kid's Instagram is crazy. So CRAZY, the number 4, and PEI, crazy for pay. They're all Sharpay. Just know that's like full on mom voice. I'm doting over them, so don't judge. And then my own personal is Erika_Sinner on Instagram.
Oh yeah. You never have to put that disclaimer here.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. We are all about the doting. They deserve every moment of that. So that's perfect. So again, thank you so, so much. And I just look forward to seeing where this goes and working with you in the future.
Thank you so much for having me.